talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love. Yes, I got fears. Fear of plane crash. Fear of car crash. Oh, fear of sex. Fear of alcohol.
Okay, so this week's case is going to be about two missing hunters. Very interesting case. Again, it's one of those cases that have stuck with me for a long time. People used to tell me that I had a photographic memory, and I don't know if that's the case, and I don't even know how you get tested for that. All I know is that I can remember things really well. Well, at least I used to be able to. Now, with age, I seem to be forgetting things a lot. But these cases, I still remember. This case I saw on Unsolved Mysteries a long time ago, but I specifically remember it on Cold Case Files with Bill Curtis. I used to watch that all the time. And this is a case that has stuck with me, much like I said in the last video with Molly Bish, how that one stuck with me, and Kathy Corzelius, and some of the other videos that I've done from Unsolved Mysteries, because they stuck with me. And I do those cases whether they have resolution or not, just because, you know, this was almost like a dream job for me. Like, I remember watching Unsolved Mysteries thinking to myself, man, if I could have my own television show and do my own cases, well, this is much like my own television show. It's actually better because I get to pick and choose and do what I want. I don't have producers telling me what to say, because I've gone through that. And although it was a great experience, there's a lot of control that's out of your hands. So this, I can just do what I want. And it's very satisfying. And I am more than happy to talk about these old cases, whether they're solved or not, because they intrigue me, and they always have. Hence, this channel called Unsolved No More, which, for people that don't know, I got that name from the book that I wrote back in, I think, 2016, something like that. Well, it's been a while now, so that's how the name of the channel came about. Before I start, I know I always say I gotta get to the content, because that's what people want. You hate hearing about people's lives and this, and I'm not one to share my life too much. I'm pretty private, but I am going to share something in regards to subscribers. And there's another thing that I hate. I shouldn't say I hate. That I don't care about. Subscribers and notifications and all that, and social media in general. I'm not a big fan of it. But the reason I mention this is that we went over 50,000 subscribers on this channel this weekend. And the only reason I bring that up is because that was a goal of mine. When I first started this about a year ago, my first actual video, I think I did Jim Morrison, and then maybe Charles Manson, and maybe John Bonet, in roughly that order. When I started those videos, it was a year ago, a little over a year ago, might be 14 months. And I remember sitting at the table with my daughter, and we came up with a goal. What would be a good goal? And I think that's always important, to have a goal to strive for. That gives you something to work for, and when you, or if you obtain it, it gives you a sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride, and that was my goal. I wanted 50,000 subscribers in a year. Some said that that was a little unattainable, but you know, that's what I set. So to accomplish that and get 50,000 subscribers was a good goal, and I met that goal. And here's the 100,000. I guess that's the next one. So the process and getting there and the numbers getting there doesn't matter to me. But the goal of getting there and continually trying to put out good content, researched, and giving my opinions. And that's all it is opinions. While educating and maybe entertaining a little bit, I guess just by watching, you are sort of, you know, can be classified as entertained, even though, again, I don't think true crime is entertainment. It does stimulate brain activity to make you think. At least that's what it does to me. So, a big thank you to all the subscribers. Don't think that I don't notice, and don't think that I don't appreciate it. It's great to have fans. It is something that I never thought I would have, but you know, I'm autographing books, t-shirts, magazines that I'm in, stuff like that, and sending them to people who request them. It's a pleasure to do so. Like Elvis once said, you know, the fans can have the shirt off my back because they put it there. And I'm a firm believer in that. So, 50,000 subscribers in 1 year. Let's do another 50,000 this time next year, and we'll go from there. Another goal met and another goal set. Now, let's get on with the show. This case is about two missing hunters from November 22nd, 1985 in the state of Michigan. These two individuals named David Tyrll and Brian Ognjan, and I hope I pronounced that right, and if I didn't, I apologize to the victim's family. They went missing right before Thanksgiving, 1985, which people like me from, you know, central Pennsylvania and all over that go deer hunting know that, you know, that is the time that the first day of buck usually is, as after Thanksgiving. So they go, or planning to go, to, I believe it was David Tyrll's family cabin to go hunting. They left November 22nd, 1985, like I said, and they were going to meet up with a friend first and then go to the cabin in order to go hunting that weekend and be back Monday. They never came back. Not only did they disappear, but their Ford Bronco, which I believe was a 1980 black Ford Bronco, also disappeared. Now, when you have cases like this where not just one but two individuals disappear and their vehicle, I do not immediately go to foul play. A perfect example of this would be Carrie Mae Parker. Most of you know I worked on that case. I was hired by the family, and when I gave my assessment, I had stated that due to some of her driving habits, the time of night that she was last seen, and when I followed the route that she would have taken on St. Patrick's Day, when she was known also to imbibe in alcohol, I saw a lot of water. And I opined that although it could be foul play, I think you need to check a traffic accident in those areas. And I put that in my book. And that was 5-6 years ago. No, it was longer than that, I think, that I opined that last year, Adventures with a Purpose found Carrie Mae's car and her remains exactly where, well, not exactly where, but along the route that I said that she could have taken to get home. Hence, no foul play, Traffic accident. She went into the water. Now, why do I say that? Well, because not everything's foul play. You have two missing hunters who are in their 20s. Okay, they're not in their 60s or anything. I believe they are both 27 years old. And their vehicle goes missing as well. Now, how do you start a missing persons investigation like that? Well, the first thing you have to do is talk to their family and get victimology from them. Are they the type of people who would disappear? Okay, you don't want to bring up anything embarrassing, but sometimes you have to. Hey, is it possible these two are having a relationship and they run away? Now you sit there and laugh. But it's a question that has to be asked. You have to go down every avenue before you start jumping on the foul play train. Check their bank accounts. Any money missing? Did they withdraw a large sum of money before they left? That could indicate that they're planning to leave. Could indicate some other things as well. But once you check into victimology and you discover, well, okay, they're definitely not into a relationship. They are best friends. They've been best friends since childhood. They're going up there. They just disappeared. Well, I'd want to ascertain, in addition, did they party? Did they drink? Were they known to frequent bars? Were they drug users? During that process, you're going to come to find out that yes, they did drink. Okay, they did frequent bars. When do married guys frequent bars the most? When they're away from their spouses. Okay? Hunters will tell you this. You go to camp. Woo! You get tore up. Okay? You're with the boys. That's what happens. Okay? Police start looking at some bars in the area, but it's not quite that easy because they never made it to where they were supposed to make it. It's almost as if they started drinking before they even got there. Maybe a roadie. You guys don't know what a roadie is? I bet some of you do. Got a cooler, you're in the truck, drink a couple beers on your way there. You know what? Let's stop at a bar. That seems like what they did. I'll take another drink. Case goes cold. Okay? No signs of them. Reminds me of one show I watched, Missing 411, I think it was, with missing hunters. I'll have to get into that sometime, but this could certainly fall into that category. Well, a few years later, rumors start circulating. And it started to get back to police when a confidential informant of theirs said, hey, I overheard these brothers who are known in this town of, I want to say Mio, Michigan, said that they, well, I'll read his quote, they were bragging. They were in a bar called O'Shea's, and the Duvall brothers were bragging about beating two hunters to death. He said that one of the brothers, JR, had gotten into an altercation with these two hunters and got beat up. And then he went home and got some reinforcements and came back. That sparked the interest, obviously, of law enforcement, and like any good law enforcement agency, they're going to follow that up. But the problem is, this is like 150 miles from the family cabin. So, initially, would you take stock in that? Would you, if you look at the address or whatever and say, oh, these, maybe. But when you get that information, the first thing you're going to do is you got two names now. At least the last name, you have Duvall brothers. Okay, it's pretty simple. Go to Michigan, you look at Duvall's, and you see what's going on with their background. Ooh, he's been arrested for assault. Ooh, disorderly conduct, drunk, in public, things like that. Starts tying things together. Okay, tie that to your victimology. Okay, well, my guys, my victims like to frequent bars. They drink. They're not from the area. These guys are from the area. They've been arrested for assault. They like to drink. Let's look into this a little further. And that's exactly what police did. But nothing comes about it. You know, more years pass. 9 years pass. But it doesn't mean that the police are laying dormant. It's the age-old adage. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Denzel said it in Training Day. And it's very true. A lot of cold cases, and I'm saying half of them, and I don't know the exact number, the exact statistics, but I'm going to say half of them, the police know who did it. They just can't prove it, okay, beyond a reasonable doubt. Remember, that's very important. It's going to be important in this case as well. So eventually, this individual, this investigator named, I want to say, his nickname's Bronco, from Michigan State Police, he gets the case and he starts doing what every good investigator does. Get off your ass and go knock on doors. Harry Bosch. If no one's ever watched Bosch on Amazon Prime, I recommend you watch it. He's the epitome of a good investigator. You got to get up out of your cubicle and go knock on doors. And that's what happened. And he got, and I've been in his situation. He knocked on a door and got a physical response. Now, what is a physical response? When you ask a question and you start seeing shaking, you start seeing the carotid artery and the neck start pumping. Those are things to cue in on. That means a lot of times they know something. And that happened. He knocked on the door of a female named Barb Boudreaux. She started saying, you know, initially she didn't know anything, but he knew. The investigator knew, and he kept after her. And it finally took a long time, but she finally cracked. Now she said, hey, I was at this bar called Linkers. I'll show it here. And the two hunters were very intoxicated. They came in there drunk. One of them kind of rubbed up against me. I didn't like it. They wanted to shoot pool for money. And one of the brothers was there. And he did not like this. Now, there are many reasons why he may not have liked this. I'm going to speculate from my personal experiences that was his bar. And I would put money on that the Duvall brothers went to that bar a lot. And they see two outsiders coming in, creating a disturbance in their bar. Now, I've been in that situation. Right or wrong. Listen, I'm all about honesty. I've been wrong a lot of times in my life. I never killed anybody, okay? So things may go too far. But I've been in the situation where I was in a bar that I felt was my bar. And outsiders came into my bar acting a fool. And sometimes the pressure's put on somebody to take care of that problem. And I've been in that situation where I had to take care of that problem, right or wrong or indifferent. Sometimes may have come out on the receiving end, but sometimes you come out on the giving end. But my experience with that makes me think, and with me, I'm talking in my 20s, okay? Long stories I don't want to get into, but reputations are something, and sometimes you feel that you have to live up to a reputation, and I felt that way for a long time. I do not anymore, but I could see these Duvall brothers feeling that. Now there's going to be some contradictions as to what the motive was here, but Barb Boudreaux, the witness, seen here with Bronco, said, me and my friend Ron were at the bar. We saw this. We saw things starting to happen. We saw the Duvalls queuing in on these hunters. And I thought, this is bad. Because the Duvalls had a reputation of handling business. And by business, I mean fighting. Barb says she goes home, and she only lives half a mile from this bar. As you can see from this map, the name Linkers, I think recently, or since 1985, has been changed to Lost Creek Sky Ranch, but you can see it's a mile away to Barb Boudreaux's address. Barb says while she's at home with Ron, she hears fighting taking place and loud voices. She says that her and Ron go down in the snow through this path in the woods and see the Bronco with its lights on and some people fighting. She runs back to the house. Ron eventually comes back and says, they beat these guys up, whatever it was. She gets subpoenaed to the grand jury, to the AG's office, finally, in 2003. She changes her story. Her story changes only that she actually watched everything. Ron, her companion, has since died, so you can't ask him. But Barb says, I heard the voices, me and Ron went down, and I saw J.R. Duvall, his real name is Raymond Duvall, they call him Junior, and Donald Duvall, who they call Coco, and 3 other individuals beating these 2 hunters. She explains in detail of how she saw David Tyrll, the taller gentleman, on his knees trying to get up as the brothers were holding him. And this is hard. It really is, but it happens. It happens all of the time. But she said David was on his knees, he had his hands up, and he said, God, please help us. And Coco Duvall said, you're dead, motherfucker. And he swung the bat, and it popped David's head. She said his head exploded. And the other victim, Brian, got away. And he said, you're killing my friend. His friend was probably already dead from that blow. But they stood him up because he had urinated himself. Because he was so scared. And They were laughing at him and mocking him, and then they put him on the ground and put the boots to him, put the bats to him, and killed him. They loaded up the bodies in the victim's own vehicle and disappeared into the night. This is a story that Barb Boudreaux tells in 2003. In May 2003, there is an arrest of the Duvall brothers, Coco and Junior. In October 2003, after a trial, and after only 2 hours of deliberation, the brothers are convicted. Now, there's a big part of the story that's been left out, right? You guys are smart enough, you're saying it right now. Well, where's the bodies? It has been alleged by numerous witnesses who overheard the Duvall brothers say that they fed the victims to their pigs. That's right. Now that kind of reminds me of a case that I worked on for the Reelz Channel. It just aired. I worked on it a year ago, but it just aired like last month, about Carol Baskins and Don Lewis and how she fed his remains to the lions. No one knows for sure if that happened. In this case, no one knows for sure if this happens. But one thing is for sure, the bodies were never recovered. One thing that was checked up on is, did any of the brothers have pigs during that time frame? And sure enough, they did. Now, being the country boy that I am, from Pennsylvania, and I've lived and I've worked on farms, and I had pigs. And let me tell you something. Anybody that has pigs knows that they can do damage and they will eat anything. Does it surprise me that these victims were fed to pigs? No. Do I think that the pigs could have eaten these victims? Absolutely. Now, there might be something left of these victims, like their skull. But that is easily to get rid of. Now, what I didn't mention is one of the stories that came from a girl who testified, who was the girlfriend of, I believe, Junior, the suspect, Junior Duvall, his son. Junior told her that he had killed these two hunters and put their body through a chipper and then fed them to the pigs. One is not more believable than the other to me. What's the commonality between the two stories? The pig. So I tend to believe that it did happen. Now, would a skull remain? Would some articles of clothing remain? Yeah, but you don't know whether they stripped the bodies and put them in there. You don't know how it occurred. And if a skull was remaining after 2 days, you would just go in there and get the skull and discard of it any way that you see fit. Horrific, right? Just horrific. So during the trial, I read the trial transcripts. Really not any evidence. You have no body, no corpus delicti. There used to be a time where you would never try a case if you didn't have a body. But no body cases have become more prevalent. But they came back in 2 hours, folks. They rendered a verdict in 2 hours. That's quick for a double murder case. But I couldn't find any more evidence other than a lot of witnesses. They had Barb, who was an eyewitness to the murder. Do I think she's lying? Absolutely not. You had a couple other of the Duvall brothers who were involved. One, getting rid of the Ford Bronco, parting it out. He admitted to it. Then he took to the stand and he denied it. That's not unusual. You got to remember, it's very troubling sometimes sitting there and facing the accused, especially if you're related to them or you know them. So I am not shocked at all that he recanted what he said. You had a couple other people at bars, seemed like mostly during Duvall birthday parties. These Duvalls like to have parties for birthdays in bars. To each their own. But the Duvalls like to brag, it seems. And the drunker they got, the more secrets they spilled. So you had a lot of witnesses that came forward and said they overheard or were told directly from the Duvall brothers that they killed these hunters. When you have that, well, if it happens once or maybe twice, let's say a jailhouse snitch says, hey, Vince Doan told me, that's a bad example because I believe Vince Doan did kill Kerry Culberson. Let's say you have a jailhouse snitch and he admits that his roommate or cellmate tells him he killed somebody. When it's or in a bar, let's say it's in a bar. Sometimes it's just a guy bragging, but not because he's confessing. Confessions sometimes get this big rap of, oh, he confessed to somebody. I would never confess if I didn't do it. Sometimes it's just somebody of a lower IQ who drinks a lot and wants to be known as the tough guy. Okay, so he brags, yeah, I killed that girl, when he had nothing to do with it. Okay, so, but when you have a bunch of that happening, then you have to pay attention a little bit more, in my opinion. Now, I want to get into the evidence and the lack of. Now, see, again, this might be an unpopular opinion, and sometimes, I guess I'm known for that, but I stand my ground. I don't do anything for sensationalism. I just really despise investigators, or even not investigators, amateurs who want to be investigators, who make big claims just to be recognized. And they're outlandish. They look at a case and they'll be like, okay, what can I say to make this stand out so people will come and look? I don't ever do that. In this case, what I will say is, and not that this is tough to say, because I am a former law enforcement officer. I was a detective. I'm still a detective, but I mean in official capacity. I would not have convicted these guys of the murder. Why? Do I think they did it? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But from what I saw, there was just no evidence of it. And it's so funny as you look at a case like O.J. Simpson, where I feel there is plenty of evidence, physical, circumstantial, direct and indirect evidence pointing to O.J.'s guilt. And he's found not guilty. And then you have a case like this, where there is absolutely no physical evidence, some indirect evidence, and certainly circumstantial, and they're found guilty in 2 hours. I think it goes to show that our justice system, as everybody knows, is imperfect. But there's no bodies. There's no vehicle. There's no blood. There's one witness. And I believe she saw what she saw. Don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. I believe it happened just like she said. But there's no evidence. There's no physical evidence. It still doesn't take away the Tyrll brothers' guilt. And I do believe that they're guilty. I don't know why this case has stuck with me. Like I said, maybe because I can put myself in the Tyrll brothers' shoes because I've been there. Like I stated earlier. But I can also put myself in the shoes of the victims. Because I've been there. I've been that outsider who went to hunting camp. Who went to a bar. And was the outsider. Now, maybe I didn't get as intoxicated as these two allegedly were, because it came to a point where I believe David Tyrll, one of the bartenders, testified that Tyrll got shut off from drinking. So I can put myself in both scenarios and both situations, and that makes it even more real to me. Now, there's contradicting stories as to why this took place. I told you one of them, and that came almost directly from the mouth of JR, who said that no, I didn't tell you that story yet. One of the stories was that they didn't like the outsiders being obnoxious in their bar. Okay? Or at least being obnoxious. They didn't say anything about it being their bar. I added that part because that's what I felt. But the two victims were being obnoxious, drunk, causing a scene. One of the brothers called the other brother, or a couple of them. They came in and took him outside and beat him up. And then took him down the road even further. And I don't know how that happened. I'm curious to that. Okay, when Barb Boudreaux said she saw David Tyrll, he was already bloody, had already been beat up before they started hitting him with the bats. So more than likely an altercation probably took place outside of Linker's bar in the parking lot. And somehow the vehicles got drove to this secluded area in the woods where the murders actually took place. I'd be curious to know how that happened. In all my research, I didn't see that, of how that took place. I can surmise or hypothesize that they beat him up, took his keys, and they drove their vehicle down there. Or maybe they said, hey, let's finish, let's fight. You guys won't, we'll fight. Drive down here so that there's no cops or anything around. We know of a secluded place. Let's go down there and fight. And the murder took place there. I don't know. I don't know how that happened. How the victim's vehicle ended up a mile down the road where Barb Boudreaux witnessed this murder. Junior told this story and he told this to his son's girlfriend, that they were deer hunting and there was a conflict over a deer that was shot. I've been in that situation as well. Not with me, but with my family, friends who I've hunted with. You hear about it. I'm sure a lot of you hunters know exactly what I'm talking about. A couple people shoot at the deer. Deer eventually goes down. You converge. I shot the deer. No, I shot it. Supposedly, Junior said that's what happened earlier in this day. There was a conflict, an argument over who got the deer. Junior says, I ran into those hunters later that night at the bar. And that was the catalyst for the confrontation and the murder. I could certainly see that. But I don't think anybody other than those brothers know the exact reason. Could it have been just because the victims were causing trouble in the bar and they, felt obligated or whatever it was to fight them and it turned into a beating death? Yes. Could have been over hunting and the deer? Absolutely. Could have been either one. Doesn't change the outcome. But again, for me, it's wanting to know. You have the end result here and you have here. It gets there, right? But I always want to know the straight line of how, why, how did it take place? Yes, we know they got beat with bats, but I want to know every step in between. How did the vehicle get down there? What started it? Who called who? Who's the aggressor? Is it Coco? Is it Junior? Things like that. I just want to know that. You always, as an investigator, any good investigator, I believe, wants to connect all the dots, leave no stone unturned. Now, in my research, I've noticed that these brothers, if not all of them, some of them were known in the junk car business. And again, that took me right back to a couple cases. Vince Doan in the junkyard with Carrie Culberson, her missing car, was able to get rid of it. Greg Emmel, in my case, that I worked on the homicide of Don Miller. They got rid of that car in a junkyard as well. And I believe it got crushed and it was gone. Not Don's car, it was Greg's car where the murder occurred. But a junkyard is familiar territory, and it is alleged that one of the brothers who actually confessed, I believe his name was Kenny, to parting out her car. And by parting out, you strip the Bronco. Take the fenders off, take the carburetor out, you take the tires off until little bitty pieces. Did they do that? I don't know. It's a possibility. Could they have buried the car? Sure, if they have access to a backhoe. Could they push the car into a body of water? Absolutely. Those things apply to the Carrie Culberson case, just like it applies to this case. The laughing. I have noted down here, and I'm looking over my notes here like I always do, that when the CI heard these guys telling the story about how they killed these victims and fed them to the pigs, they were laughing. And one of them said, one of the brothers, one of the suspects, said to this group that he was talking to at a bar at this birthday party, that the confidential informant overheard him say, "You should have seen the expression on the one guy's face when we killed the other guy." There's sociopaths in life. There's psychopaths. I mean, you can classify people any way that you want, right? But sometimes it doesn't have to be all scientifical. You just say there were some evil people. Now, I will say that I'm very good. If I can say that I'm good at something, I'm good when I look at cases not to judge. Not just looking at cases, in general. Not to judge. Like I see a guy in the newspaper, 57 years old, gets a DUI. And I'm thinking, initially, why is a 57-year-old getting a DUI? But you don't judge that. Number one, because you have no idea what that guy's going through or what happens if And this is a rarity or whatever, probably never occurred, I don't know. But my point is, what if that 57-year-old just found out that day he got cancer? And his wife just died of cancer 6 months earlier. And his only remaining kin, say his daughter, got hit by a car and died that day. And he said, you know what? I've had it. I'm going to the bar and I'm getting drunk. And he gets drunk and he gets pulled over. Is his actions wrong because he broke the law? Technically, yes. But do you blame him? That's not for me to just decide, but I don't like to judge people because you don't know what situation they're in. So I try not to do that. Were these brothers wrong in what they did? Absolutely 1000%. But I do not know the circumstances that led up to this. Let's say, for instance, and this didn't happen, I don't believe in this case, but let's just for, shits and giggles, let's just say that one of these brothers was in the bar and playing pool with his wife, and the brother is so intoxicated, or the victim is so intoxicated that he comes up and just blatantly grabs the breasts of the girlfriend who's playing pool and starts making obscene things. Would you not get mad if you were the boyfriend or the husband of that girl and you saw that occur? Sure you would. Some of you may even fight. You might even fight him right there. I know in my earlier days, I probably would. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the receiving end or you're on the giving end of a fight. They'll know that you're there. And not to do that. Maybe you're so intoxicated that you beat the person to death. It has happened. You didn't intend to do that, but you did. Should you be held responsible? Sure, that's why there's a law called manslaughter. It's not first-degree murder. But in this case, they made a conscious decision to take them from the bar, whatever happened in the bar or the parking lot, from that location to another location and introduce weapons such as aluminum baseball bats. Now, let's say you take an aluminum baseball bat and you smack somebody across the arm. Right here. That's one thing. You take that aluminum baseball bat across somebody's head, you have every intention on killing them. And you need to be held responsible, not manslaughter. That's first-degree murder, folks. And that's what they were charged, and that's what they were convicted with. Now, I got off there a little bit talking about different situations and not judging. And I try not to do that. And I think I'm very good at that. But it doesn't change the outcome that a victim's family is without them because of your decision. It's a shame and it's a sad situation. And it goes to show, what if these Duvall brothers, and I believe this, they're their own worst enemy. If they never would have said anything, I don't believe they would have been convicted. Now you have the witness, Barb, who really is the hero in this case. Make no mistake about it. And she was threatened by these brothers after that happened. She watched the fight. She watched the murder. Went back to her house. She alleges that the brothers, 5 minutes later, and she saw the bodies being loaded up into the victim's own vehicle. She went back to her house. The Duvall brothers came there and said, You say anything. You didn't hear nothing. You didn't see nothing. And pigs need to eat too. Now, whether they said that or not, if they did, there's another instance where pigs are brought up. So, I tend to believe that that is what happened. But without that, this case would continue to remain unsolved. There was another witness who came forward and said that they saw a brand new type of Ford Bronco, black, and around the Duvall residence, and overheard one of the Duvall brothers come out and say to one of the other Duvall brothers, "What are you doing with that thing here? You're going to get us all in trouble." So you can assume that that was the victim's vehicle, and probably at that point they probably decided to, and that bugs me a little bit. Were they riding around in that vehicle? That's pretty ballsy. You would think that you'd want to get rid of that vehicle as soon as possible. That's another thing that I'd be curious to know. Michigan State Police did a tremendous job on this case. Again, I said I wouldn't have convicted, but doesn't mean they didn't do a terrific case. I just didn't see the evidence there to convict these guys. And that's just my opinion. There's other people who say that's plenty. It's just a difference of opinion. Oh, let's see if there's anything else I want to cover on this case. A lot of missing hunters, state forest. Again, I talked about the missing 411. I'll have to get into that some point in time. I think from what I saw, there was some sort of supernatural component to that missing 411 series. Good or bad, I don't know. Indifferent, I guess. What can we learn from this case? Well, the most important thing I would say is you learn you can never give up. This happened in 1985. In 2003, they were finally arrested. Another thing is, don't be scared to come forward if you have information on an unsolved case like this. Barb Boudreaux was scared to death, shaking, didn't want to. She lied at first for a while until it all came out. Nothing ever happened to her. She died natural causes. So don't think that something is going to happen to you if you speak up. It also shows how allegiances change, and I say that all the time. I think we can also learn that foul play, although it's not always the case, when you start putting things together, hearing witnesses describe victims as being drunk and disorderly, the Duvall brothers of being like the bullies in town and liking to fight, and you look in their history and they've been arrested for assault, and you start tying things together. That's how you build a case. That's how it goes from 2 hunters just disappear for 20 years and you don't hear anything, to 2 suspects, and then stories, and then motives. That's how you build a case, folks. So, guess that's it for this case. I got a couple good ones coming up. A police officer from Ohio got a hold of me about a case that I might be working. I might actually go on scene and go out there. I haven't done that yet, but I might. There was another case where a couple investigative journalists have been working on a case for a long time. They recently got a hold of me about a missing, I think she was a journalist too, that went missing. And I may look into that. So, that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and until the next one. This was the case of the 2 missing hunters, and please, as always, much, much, much respect to the victims. I don't care if they were drunk, staggering, disorderly, rude, obscene. They did not deserve to die. They did not deserve to have their heads bashed in with aluminum baseball bats by a couple of two-wit brothers who think that they run a town. Okay? First and foremost. So my respect to the victims and the victims' families, as always. Mains out.
All fear of